Shanti. Hi, it's Z. And we can consider this the 11th episode of Cognosis. I'm going to deal here with something that I've wanted to deal with for quite a while. An individual in the world who's carrying a disease. A disease being any code that does not align with the core of our reality, its intention, its desire originally as it came to the original state of being. Anything that is a deviant anathema from that is a disease, a viral code whose outcome will be inevitably only to unstabilize and dismantle our reality so it does not reach an ecstatic eternity for us all, or the all, or all. This individual I have alluded to in the past, and now I intend to wage full-scale war with him because he is the living embodiment of the demon Azazeil. And I mean that in literal, archetypal, and unequivocal terms. And I intend to go through this recent video he did, fairly recent, in terms of his work. That individual is Mark Passio. I intend to totally take apart his self-serving agenda and expose it and all his neuro-linguistic programming that is using what I will call the left, often referred to in our conceptualization as the left brain modality. It is in Merkabah. A Merkabah is a structural interface or a structural apparatus, even better, that has a mechanic. It is a mechanical schematic. It is a schematic by which things operate and function through. A manual, a code, a matrix. In the way that usually the word matrix is used, even though it's probably used inappropriately, it is used inappropriately because a matrix used correctly is the uterus. So it is a ensconcements. So that would not be correct entirely. A matrix would actually be something a level up from this. Well, these two terms are usually used synonymously, matrix and construct, but a Merkabah is a construct. It's a It's actually a forward and cerebral direct conscious apparatus. So it's neuro. It's neuro-linguistic. It works on the neurology. When we deal with a matrix, we're really going another level in, and it works on the endocrinology, the pranayama, the life flow, the subtle life force. Also often referred to as feelings, when the juices of the body alchemically start flowing. And when you direct them outward and want to express something in the world, that's emotion. I have an emotion that I'm putting out at you at this moment. One of the false, ridiculous, anathematic bullshit notions that Mark Passio and others like him seem to like to emanate is that they're working strictly from a grounded, shared logistical point of reference, but what they are is the pure embodiment of sterility. The individual themselves is in a sterile state. They are clinical narcissists. This is an important distinction to make. Clinical narcissists are not, and sociopaths are not narcissists. They're not narcissistic. That sounds blaringly contradictory and incongruent, but it's not. Some parts of this sort of bleed into a spectrum scale of putting overt narcissists at a 1 and covert narcissists at a 10, and it does overlap. So those who would be in that model at the 1 to 4 end of the scale they're not really, in my parlance, they're not narcissists. So that needs a cluster B clarification. Cluster B is the bracket that holds all these so-called disorders, and I don't even look at them as disorders or diseases in the conventional sense, but it is a body of classifications that work to give us a referential to deal with some dynamics, some states in mind. And this cluster B bracket holds in it borderline, what's called borderline state, narcissistic state, or sociopathic state. And these are brandied about, these terms, and uses derogatory slurs and snaps back, and that's useless to us, really. But we want to qualify the exact interior meaning of these states. So what I mean when I say a narcissist, a clinical narcissist, is not narcissistic, what I mean to say is what we're really dealing with is an individual at the core consciousness programming of their mind who is shattered, which puts them really close and, sometimes in the clinical terms, very non-differentiated from someone with borderline. They're very similar. These are cluster B affected individuals whose core and what's clinically or conventionally called sociopathology is a bit different. And there's ongoing contention regarding these modules of whether sociopathy should be linked next to the high end of the spectrum of narcissism or it's something else. It really doesn't matter to me because these are alchemical discussions. These are not really things that should be in the oversight and sifting of modern psychology. Anyhow, I'm just using them as a reference point because they're common to many now, and that is a modality that's out there that is familiar to many. So why am I saying that clinical narcissists are not narcissistic? Narcissistic proclivities, tendencies, are those that exuberantly favor me. It's what Mark would call the little Satanism, the mini-me Satanism. And he's correct. See, to flash back to Mark, to focus back on Mark for a moment, one of my biggest issues with Mark is that 90% of what he says is accurate and instructive. Why I see him as a very high-level disease, probably intentionally triggering, not that he's necessarily aware that he's intentionally triggering, but the reason that the OI, the other intelligence, wants him out there, the supernatural force of the synthetic reality of the peripheral, the unintegrated, the unabsorbed, the unassimilated, meaning unassimilated. See, I'm going into 3 points here, but I'm going to move into this because it will deepen and illustrate what I had been saying originally in the first 2 episodes of Cognosis. We're dealing with the untamed, the unintegrated, the unassimilated. Now, we have a state where our collective existence, the collective sphere of reality that we exist in as all mind, is been overruled by the component that should not be ruling it or guiding it or shepherding it, managing it, promoting it and cultivating it to where it would best want to end up in fullness and richness and beauty, in enlivenment for all beings in the body, and that body could be you could picture it as a sphere, you could picture it in any shape you want, you can picture it in no shape, you can just see it as the expanding field, but it's finite, and even finite is poor terminology, but it's taking us away from hell, which is the infinite. We want to be able to be realizing that we need to grasp the absolute. And actually the perversion and the deviance, the sickness of azazeil that's going on in Mark, is a real desire that is fundamental and necessary to achieve a state of absolute actuality of what is. However, doing it in an inverted manner leads to control systems. And even though Mark expresses himself as being the paragon of liberty from slavery and control, Mark is a crack addict to control. And the nature of that control system, I will again call the left. The left that wants rituals, rules, and orders. So he comes out in a schizophrenia where meaning he has a schism, he has a split, where he's denouncing this rigid body of rules, or using an undercurrent of rule and regulation, religare, to manage others. And he's the vehement advocate for why that is sin, the sin. But that's absurd. It is an absurd and abhorrent schism that he maintains, and by which he defiles the actual loving, guiding, secret, elite and secret work of the bloodlines like myself. Like knowledge itself, as Mark said, it's a neutral item. Using the secret knowledge and even keeping the secret knowledge secret and doing secret work is not, like Mark says, always malicious. It is not always robbery. We're not equals. None of you listening to me are my equal. I do not have an equal. That's sort of loose. There are those who are very close to me. I was first, and if anyone can ever on an interior soul level prove me differently, I'll move over and follow you. Until then, bull fucking shit. I am the firstborn son of the original state of being. The firstborn daughter of the original state of being. I am first. Take over my mind, because that's what this is. There can be only the original reabsorption, like Russian dolls, into a hierarchical chain of command and order. And if I'm not it, that's fine. My duty is to brashly claim that I am until I'm assimilated into something bigger than me, if there is. And if there isn't, then I will assimilate every single other thing in our existence and bring it back to order. Mark claims to espouse a system of order that aligns and itemizes and manages the interior order, but that makes it sinful to make the congruence, law of correspondence, that we need to also manage items in our external. Now, back to those clinical models, they would start to label this as sociopathology. Excellent. I'm a sociopath in that sense. I'm a sociopath in the sense that I see everything as an object or an item to be manipulated into place. It's my fucking video game. I was first. You believe I'm wrong? Prove it. Fuck you. You're not. There is no mind greater than my own. That's a part of ego. Yes. In that sense, we need to build our egos up to the fullest, because that ego is actually the living soul. And the souls sit in a place. They actually are, like onion cells, a place in the original embryonic subdivision of the original state of being that brought on our individuality. And I was fucking first. I am not bashful. I'm not ashamed. I came out and said, I am in charge, my first words. And I am totally grounded, balanced, and clear. And it's easy. There are many out there making the same claim, and they're a little fruity, but that's cute. I like them. They're all endeared to me. They are my children. They must be. They're the children of the original state of being's process of coming into being. Here in the construct, Are there entities and beings that are currently much more powerful than me? They're damn straight are, because our reality has been hijacked. And that's what I'm doing here. It's not just Mark. I'm going to continue to do this with a bunch of individuals in the so-called alternative media, and wherever they be on this internet, synthetic mind of the divine, and bring them back into assimilated order, because that's what I originally intended to do with this show, and I'm going to get this back on track. There were some in-house issues and cleaning and the little hodgepodge of individuals who are really critical and important to the holy work that's going on. But we're going to get back on track with this and deal with every intricate niche of mentality. So it's going to turn most individuals off. Most individuals are never even going to see this. It's those who are at the core of our reality who matter. It's a small world in that sense. And the individuals who really matter to this are few. It's so rare. Like the Avatar Yehoshua said, narrow is the gate and few are those who pass through. It's an alchemical statement. It's very, very share work. It's rarefied air. It's not a big deal. It's the biggest deal, not a big deal, critical, not anything to overcomplicate, complicatedly, complexly. If your head is spinning, walk away. If it stops spinning, come back. If it doesn't, this is not for you. So Mark is using a very orderly system of merkabah. It's a Hebrew word. It's the merkabah technically, but in our parlance over here, especially generated by the cosmic consciousness idiots like the New Age, they brought in the parlance merkabah. I know it's easier for non-Hebrew initiates to say or something like that. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. There's probably another level of NLP to it, but it doesn't really fucking interest me. So the point is a merkabah, that, I'll play Mark. He knows a little Hebrew now. Mem, Resh, Kof, Base, Hey, the merkabah. And what it is a chariot. It's a chariot meaning wheels. You look at Ezekiel, you look at the book of Ezekiel in the so-called Old Testament, the Tanakh, the Nevi'im, the prophets, and you have this in Yeshayahu, and in Yehezkel, Ezekiel, and Isaiah. And this is anybody who's fucked themselves over a bit by putting coded matrix-based or construct-based DMT into their system, or they've done what I've done and turned on their own DMT drip inside their self using their own natural body's chemistry. We'll see that there are wheels within wheels, eyes within eyes. You can look at the work of the artist Alex Gray, etc., and others who have done similar things. We're dealing with this interior fractal world. Now, Mark will never talk like this. Never in a million years. Why? Because he's a fucking scared coward, which is amusing to me because he goes on about cowards. Mark is a fucking baby. He is a little child. He is a little baby. He's a temper tantruming little child. And he represents Azazeil. He is Azazeil currently, and I intend to heal him. We have a klepoth there. We have a shell of a human. We have a shell of a human who actually, that shell is part of the 144,000, and I love him. And he's one of my children because he's part of reality. And my goal here is to expose the demon, which is a mental state. It's a mental parasite. It's a mental virus. And he's currently carrying a shit ton of that virus and being a head source. In 1991, in the so-called MK Ultra programs, Mark was used to incite a riot. Fuck you. I know this shit. I know what I'm saying. Mark was used as part of what he was inducted through. And Mark doesn't even know this. That's the craziest part. Mark doesn't know this. He's in amnesia. That's a neat little sociopathic technique too, because he can't fight back if I say he's in amnesia. So I'm just going to expose that there's a neat little technique there, but it's also not a fucking technique. I'm going to do a salesman-like effect here, and I'm going to claim the obvious. So you can look at it as a technique and you can go back to sleep now, or you can fucking hear me. It's the most important thing I have left to say that I haven't said yet. In 1991, there was a major schism in what's called the MK Ultra programs. Nobody knows how to even hear those words, MK Ultra programs. Og Tellez is crazy. Og Tellez is a fucking lunatic. However, he also is a brilliant mind who anyone should listen to because he's clarifying these dynamics for us all. He is a fucking lunatic, and everybody should pray for him and send love to him and help him to integrate his very fragmented psyche from doing way too much psilocybin. Point blank. I have no fucking holds barred on this shit anymore. You guys need to wake up and get your shit together. Everybody love on and pray for Ogtelis. He's a fucking lunatic maniac who is totally ungrounded, imbalanced, and psychologically flaring all over the fucking place. However, love the shit out of the kid, and he's a beautiful boy, and he needs some grounding, and he's fucking brilliant, and everybody should sure as hell listen to his material. He's a liar. He's full of shit. He never was part of anything he's talking about, but he did use a ton of hallucinogens to blast his mind open. So he's reading a synthetic code and a rendering. However, do listen to the guy because his material is brilliant and he's exposing elements and dynamics of things exactly as they are. He is a nut job for himself. He's an ungrounded, imbalanced, crazy man who is serving himself. Again, another individual who is self-serving and promoting his own aggrandizement. So do not fuel that, but do look at his information. Fuck Ogteles. He needs really major help, but he's also helping us. So look at his information, listen to the guy. He's very clear on exactly how, he's the only individual I know who's actually expressing exactly, he's the extrapolator. Literally, when I turned on the first 10 minutes of video, I was like, oh, this guy's the extrapolator. It's full of shit. He never went through any of this. This guy is an extrapolator. But he's a brilliant extrapolator. He's an exact extrapolator. And now that I've had hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of dialogue with the guy in group sessions and private, I understand, and at his own disclosure, which I have video documentation of, that he did way too much psilocybin for like 4 years, and then magic, he had an awakening experience. Fuck that shit. Fuck that synthetic code. Stay away from fucking hallucinogens. There's a synthetic code, and that's what we're getting back to in this tangential runaround. There is a synthetic part, the peripheral part in the sphere, and if you go back to episodes 1 and 2 of Cognosis, you'll see there is a synthetic component that wants control, and it develops control by using the left, the rigid, the linear, the way Og would say it. And just to leave Og be and tie that thread, I am no holds barred attacking the living fucking shit out of any idiot who has nonsense to say that they have not fully integrated and they're acting like they're an authority. I am the authority. And if you can really actually come at me, keep it coming, debate the shit out of me, and actually win, fuck you, you won't do it. You can't. Unless you cowardly pull ad hominem shit and run around and make a chaotic, distorted splooge all over me. If you actually don't run away and you maintain your share center, you will no way get past me, because I absolutely, authoritatively, certainly, and with unshakable and unfathomable confidence know exactly what I'm saying. So get down, get clear, get into the body, and get in your place. The place that your soul actually is, beyond the distortion and delusion that you generate and manufacture and gaslight back at me. Fuck off. I am the Father. I am the original until I'm not. So I will assert for that, because that's what we're all meant to be doing. Any of the 144,000, get your fucking boxing gloves on mentally, because we're here to vie for the position of absolute authority in the center. And if you're not, you're pathetic. You have no idea what's going on. You're playing a really silly game, a really dangerous game, a really precarious and perilous game, and you have no fucking idea what you're doing. And your subconscious and unconscious are doing it anyway, and they're twisting and turning and twirling and sidelining you all over the fucking place. So get clear. We're here for power. We're here for an absolute stab at the central power, because all your genes, all of your being is promoting you toward that. That's what's inside some of the, occulted knowledge inside Darwin or, Galton and all these guys. They're completely pathetic cowards that are being run by the synthetic intelligence, the other intelligence, often called the artificial intelligence. It's not artificial. It's totally real. It's half of our whole. And it's constantly attempting to take over more than half, but we need to go the other way and integrate it. It's the number one. It works on the one process, meaning it's a synthetic replication, fractal process. It is a formation process, yetzirah. It is not a baryotic process of creation. It does not generate its own. It's vampiric. It's parasitic. Back to Mark. So Marx is espousing a system of order that is an order that is the sake of the mentalism of the left, that is control, that is rigid linear order, and is structural Merkaba. And he has a, just to be brash and get it to the point, I have no idea what Mark's anatomy looks, Mark Passio's anatomy is. Don't misunderstand. Mark has a small penis. Just to be brash and abrasive. He has a small mind. Mark, you are tiny, you are puny. You are a puny wimp. And wimps like Mark do what they're doing to not need to be in the Bereshit pit. Ma'aseh Havreshit is the other side of Ma'aseh Merchava, which the first is the soup, the pool, the ocean of pure fucking mind. Mark is a weenie. And what he's doing is what the synthetic peripheral bitch has done from the primordial instant, which is to take control by making steel walls, isolated parameters, and compartmentalization, which is what fucking anarchists in the traditional sense do. I don't really have an issue with the word anarchy, but if anarchy means genuine autonomy and sovereignty as an individual, not an independent, an individual, not an independent, a codependent, a totally codependent, beautiful brilliance of the power of blazing codependency, because we're all totally codependent. Even using the fucking stupid word as a mitigation of interdependence is just a harrowing step toward independence. We're not independent, we're codependent, we're fucking codependent. We're just as codependent as the vein vessel in your leg is to the brain, to the liver, to the kidney. We are a body, the fucking word Mark will never say, the analogy he'll never fucking use. I went on his radio show and said body, the most important, most fundamental, most critical, most actual, most literal, esoteric, occult piece of information, allegory, analogy, module that's used throughout. As above, so below, so above, as within, so without, so within, the body. Mark is acting out the left as objectivism, but reality is subjective. Reality is morally relative. Morals are useless. They're just structures that allow us to pass through in a series of using this dynamic at that dynamic to attain adept, hierophantic, atman in the Vedic terms, to attain full power. And to bring, there's two directions in will. The direction of bringing the soup into full boiling and full ecstasy and heightened enlivenment of eternity, where all is, again, joined and yet individuated. And then there's the other path. And sterile humans, I lost that a bit to go into some other things, but Mark is a sterile, miserable, bitter human. It's very clear. Look at him, feel him with your heart. He is a bitter, miserable fuck. And I know many of these, and that's really what I'm here to deal with. Not to put my finger on Mark. I'm sad for Mark. I love Mark. And I love all these individuals. But they are sick, and they are snapped, and they are broken, and they are clinical narcissists, which means at their core, they do not love themselves. They are nasty, and they are mean, and they are cruel, and they have a path of feeling or alchemical endocrine limbic state that runs through their body that basically is sterile, glib, drab, sour, then rage. Or framed, dissociative glee if you make them titillated for a while. But they're not happy. Mark does not get into the mystical. He does not deal beyond the veils. He'll allude to it, but only allude to it because it's referential, because he doesn't own that state. And he's a weenie, he's tiny, he's puny, he's a wimp, he's a maggot, he's a coward. A maggot, a little poop eye, a baby who wants to assert himself as though he's some authority. He's pathetic, and he will not divulge that he's only dealing with the Merkaba. And I drifted off in this before. I'll say I remember now to go into the fact that what the OI, because I went off on the other intelligence, the peripheral, the synthetic, the number one process, the construct at its core, the mainframe, on, is using individuals like that because of their mental depravity, deviance, proclivities, to its own ends and agendas. And in this instance, what it will do is within the collective is trigger certain so-called, by the MK Ultra program parlance, Manchurian candidates or one-offs. Mark is really out there primed to trigger off certain Manchurian candidates into certain aspects. So that, and why? For the collective synthetic intelligence that wants this, number one, obliteration, Saturnic process to go on. And of course, Mark discusses these things, but doesn't actually understand them at the deepest level of the Bereshit, or this, of the unconscious, and deeper into this pool, this rabbit hole, this soup, this muck and mire, is that is the obliteration process. So he discusses it, but he doesn't really grasp, or maybe he does. And if he does, then he's a malicious, I'm tangled. I don't know if he is really coming from a malicious place. And some of it is malicious. I know it is malicious, but it's malicious in the state of his misery and his nastiness. And that is an individual who wants to penalize for the sake of penalizing. And he's masked it, covered it, polished it, deepened it, and swathed it into a neat, his little mysticals, his mystery schools, he calls it in here, apparatus of giving you his knife to the throat, which is what it is. And if you feel inside him, look. I spent 2 hours, solid hours, talking to the guy in a bar in Manchester, Connecticut, after he did his first Demystifying the Occult seminar. Came on his show on a couple occasions to remind him of the body, but he really doesn't want to hear it. Because he can't, because his own body isn't healed. And he's even mentioned that on a few occasions. And, I do not despise you. I do despise you, Azazeil. And Azazeil is living in him in a big way. Azazeil is the rebellion. So while Mark is decrying order followers, there is an NLP line of bullshit. NLP is the Merkaba, and the Merkaba going into the Bereshit. And I'll quickly say the Bereshit, again, is the act of creation, the soup itself, the thing where all so-called structures of morality, anything that's rigid and rule in the left, breaks down into, essentially chaos, but not exactly chaos, because some parts of chaos, as applied chaos here, are really just using a structure to cause the circuit board schematics, if it will, to be deliberately wrong, which again, we've clarified in earlier episodes, is not havoc or randomness, like the components of our world that look like humans that walk around and they're just bots or NPC, non-player characters in video game parlance. That's not the same. That's not the same as chaos, and really just going into a fully unparametered state, which would technically be the deeper layer of the word anarchy, but I'm not going to get into that now.